Hello everyone, welcome back once again to our OData learning series for beginners. And today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic on our OData design, and that known as deep insert. So what this deep insert means and how this is relevant with our OData design. Let's understand this concept with a bit of some example. In our regular sales order process, we know that we have a sales order header details or header document segment, followed by each order may have multiple line items, and each line item will have different schedule lines. So in that particular case, let's assume that I want to create a sales order where I'll pass on all the details related to header, all the items that I want to create, and each item relevant schedule lines in one payload, right? And when I'll make a request to our OData service that obviously you are going to design now, should be able to accommodate this request, and it will eventually create the order in one go. So that way, multiple server round trips is not required to create individual segments of the order. Rather, we will be able to create the document in one server trip, right? So that's why to improve the performance and to make use of an elegant design, we should use the deep insert. It's a very important concept, so pay attention till end. So before we start with our development process, let's begin with a few questions. The first thing is, when we have our OData service created, we will eventually land up with certain URI like that, where this is my service name followed by certain endpoints. Now in our particular use case, if this is our service, let's assume that this is what we are going to create eventually, then we'll have two endpoints. One will be the header and other will be the item. So question is that which endpoints we are supposed to call or make a request to. The answer would be, in this case, the header set that we are going to make a request to. Now obvious question would be that header is only having the header fields, correct? So how header entity will get to know if I pass some item details in our payload request, right? So header doesn't know about the item because it's a different entity which all contains the item attributes, and that is the item entity set. That means we have to make a tweak of it. At the runtime, I'll point this header header entity set to a specific deep structure which will contain both header as well as item. So I'm now in SAGW transaction code, where I'll start creating a new OData project. So click on the create option, click on the create button, and now you can put, let's say this is what I'm going to create, deep insert demo. We can put as a $TMP, as a local object, or you can select over here as well. So this is actually a new project that I'm going to create. A project name is deep insert. So that's okay. Now project got created and everything is actually empty. So now to start with, I'll actually go with the data model, import certain data structure. It will be order header, and I'm going to use the Z parent as the table, and let's also create the default entity set at the same time. I'll select everything, but I don't need to mandate to display. It's of no use, so click on next. Now every entity should have a key field. So I want to set the order header ID or order ID as the key field in this case, and I'm clicking on finish. So that way my entity type created, entity sets also created. Similar way I'll create the order item. So let's go here. In this case, I'll select order ID and Posner as the composite key. So now you can see the order item set and order item both created. Next, I'll create the association between these two. I'm giving the name as a header 2 item association name. So entity type, the principal will be, let's say, order header, because this is my parent. Child would be, let's say, order item. Now the cardinality will be either 0 or 1, of course, because only one parent. Now for the item, I can have 0 item, but or multiple items. Now let's create the navigation property. Now put a different name. Let's say I put as a nav. So that is the navigation to order item set from order header. And similarly here from order item, we can nav to the parent or order header. Move forward. Now I have to put certain dependent property, because from parent to child, when I'm moving, I'm just want to add as the order ID between these two to map, kind of a foreign key. And now just for a confirmation, that is going to create an order association set. I click finish. Now you can see that each entity will have a nav property. Association also created, and association set is also created. So my data model is all built, and now we need to create the business logic. So for that, I'll create the runtime artifacts, or rather I can click on this project and click on this generate button, which will help me to create the runtime artifacts. I will just accept whatever I get it as a default, and then click on OK. I want to store it in a local object. As in a package, yes. Now I'm going to save it as a local. Yeah, the runtime artifacts all got created successfully, which you can find over here. So here we have the DPC and DPC XT and MPC XT. This is my model, and this is my service. So now I have come to this MPC extension class, because I have to little bit make a tweak to the request payload, because the header is supposed to accept the item details as well. So kind of a deep structure, and that's why this deep insert names come from. So if I go to the type, let's create a custom type first, and there I'll talk about like how my payload is supposed to. Click on edit, and I can put yes deep entity, and it's a public type. So let's click on this button and create a public types over here. So I'll create a types like that. So this is my type name, and I'm basically telling this will be my parent properties. This structure will contain all the properties of the parent. That means including mandate, as well as I'm just telling that this will be my nav properties, and this is supposed to be a table type, right? And which will be a type of the order item that we can refer from the model provider class. And that's how I just define this type, and this type I'll be used later on. I activated this class, and I'll come back to the method section, and here I'll need to redefine this define method. So what my intention is that when the order header entity comes, then this framework will actually enhance the runtime structure dynamically, kind of, with this default deep structure just now we have created. So the code will be something like that. So I have told that this is my order header. When I receive this entity name as the order header, please make sure this extension should be this name. Yeah, so this is my model provider class name. For this extension, we just created this TS deep entity, right? So I'm telling that bind this structure of the order header with the type of just now as a custom type or table type rather. And that way order header will be now able to understand a deep kind of a payload request. I hope this part is pretty simple, but this is the tricks that's how order header will be able to accommodate both header and item now. So make sure you activate the model provider class, whatever the changes you have made, and go back to the dpcext class where we'll be writing our business logic. Now I'm in the dpcext class, and I'll look for the create deep entity kind of a method which needs to be implemented or rather re-implemented. So click on the edit button and then you'll see this button active. Click on this redefine method, because this is the create deep entity which is supposed to get triggered when we make a request with an header and item as a kind of a deep payload. If I want to make a request with, then this is the respective method that will be triggered. So what we're going to do here will be just first grab the input payload data and will be put into certain deep entity type structure like that. And now this one supposed to be defined. Let's define this work area called ls deep entity, and you can see this all coming all the way from the mpcext ps deep entity, which is declared under mpcext class as a custom type, which is the deep type. Now the second step would be capturing only the header part out of this deep structure, and I'll put it into certain ls parent. Next step would be like step 3, if I think. It is all about generating a new order or creating a new order as a input payload. So I'll be generating certain order ID, and for that I have planned to consume certain number range. So the logic would be like that. Here I'll just check if the order ID is initial, then call this number get next function module, and this is kind of an object that I created in my system through the transaction SNRO, means SAP number range object. And what about the number get next will return the order ID that will capture in this variable. And finally, once I get the order ID, I'll fill the respective property for the ls deep entity order ID as well as the parent order ID. Next step will be, let's say, step 4. Let's update the parent table or order table in this case. So I'll use the modify statement, and I'll update my z parent out of this ls parent structure, which is containing the latest order ID details if I need to generate. Otherwise, it will just continue with the input order ID data. Now, next logic or next step, rather step 5, is filling item records. So generally in our order sales order items, we can have certain differentiating number values, let's say 10, 20, 30. It's though configured from SPRO level, but let's assume for a understanding purpose, there is a difference of 10 always, means first line item value would be 10, second will be 20, and so on. So let's put that logic, and what I'm trying to do over here, let's say whatever the order ID that I received as a payload, or maybe it's a generated one, then I'll check the latest Posner value that is already available in the database table, which is an item table, in this case called gchild. And let's assume like if this order ID is first time created, means freshly created out of this number get next function module, obviously you'll not find the data in this table, and in that case it will start from number 10. Otherwise it will just take the next number, what is the highest number that will receive, and then it will take the follow-on number by adding a 10 and keep updating like that. Let's look for the step 6. So step 6 is all about updating my item table, because my item data is now already by above logic, and I'm able to update my item table with corresponding deep structured input internal tables, right? That the table we just filled up in our above loop and loop logic. So let's do that now. Let's say updating item table. Now I'm just making a commit work here, because if something goes wrong, then possibly certain raise exception and exception handling has to perform. But I'm not making that exception in our demo program. I'm just trying to make things a little simple. Now the last stage, or step 7, uh, should be like, pass back the details, or record order details that we just formed over here. So that's a copy data reference to rep. So we have this our ls entity, ls zip entity, which is having all the item POSNER values filled up, header value, header ID also populated. All right, and finally this is just passing back the data, so that when I'll make a request to create an order, as a response I'll return the values that been maintained over here. So that's all. Our create deep entity method is implemented. Let's quickly see a syntax check. If anything goes wrong, we need to fix it. Otherwise we can, okay, looks like we have to just declare on variable. So let's declare it L order ID that we have not yet declared. So we can go top and we can put a value over here as a variable called L order ID of type _10 that will hold our order value. I think all good syntactically. So let's activate this particular method, and we are actually done with our deep insert coding perspective. So next step would be obviously testing the logic to see how it's actually working. Before we start testing our changes, let's activate the service by going through service maintenance, and we can click on this register. I'll put the package assignment as local. Click on OK. So that way my service will be registered. We can go to SAP Gateway Client, and it will open our backend service, which we just created. So let's first check the metadata part kind of. So you can open add URI option, go for $metadata. So if I execute it, hopefully it should run. Yes, so service is actually active and up and running. So now we can test it in 2 ways. Now we can use the Postman and we can test it. We can also test over from this gateway client as well. So now it's time to test our changes. So let's get our entity set called order header, because this is what we'll make a request to. As a payload, I have framed a very simple payload. Let's get into that. This is the payload that we will try with, and here this is our ordered header details. Very simple. But you have noticed possibly like this is our navigation property, exactly the same name we have to give, and this is how our div structure also having the same property. It's an array of objects, so each object is actually linking with certain POSNER values, though I'm passing the POSNER data, but technically I'm not supposed to POSNER values over here. We can remove this as well, because POSNER we are going to calculate. Then I'm just giving a plant and some material. Let's put some material number 6, let's say put it 7, kind of a random data. And I think this is what should be a good data for us to test. The JSON is valid, so let's put that as a request payload. Now this request to start with, we have to do a little bit of change. So let's click on add header, and I want to say like this is the content type is an application slash JSON, because a JavaScript object type of content that I'm trying to pass. And before we run, we have to let's put a breakpoint so that we know like what's going on. And this is how it was our create deep entity method. Let us put a breakpoint over here, and now let's go back to our client. But we have to make a request. We're passing a payload, so it should not be a get call, it should be a post operation. And we can make a request with execute, because we are trying with within the system. So that's why for making a post, we don't need any XSRF token. But if I could need to do the same testing from post one, then yeah, I need to pass the XSRF token as well. So let's try with this option first. Let's click on execute. Hopefully that method called create the entity got triggered. That is what we expected. So if I execute this particular function or method, I'm expecting the data should be now filled, which all came from the request payload. And you can see order ID is initial, and order item, I have two order items. One is 7 and 6. I think this is all pretty good, right? So let's move back, and now we'll check the parent details. Of course, parent is filled, but order ID is initial, as I can see. So obviously I have to create a new order ID data. So order ID generated as 10. Fantastic. So let's push it to our order ID empty field, which is currently empty. So let's put that new data over here and just check what my ARIS parent contains. So other than mandate, all fields are populated. So if I just make a modify operation, that mandate will auto filled. Okay. With this order ID, it's looking for the Posner, and max data it is getting. So max data is coming as empty. Okay. So because there is no record actually found over there. So max data come as empty, and let's move on with the loop. And here I'll just take the 10 as the value. So initial number will become 10, and that's where the values gets calculated. And if I just go down, so this is what the data that's filled up. Let's see what it contains. So 10 and 20 makes sense, and order ID is also filled. So my item record is also perfectly prepared, and now we are ready to make a modify to this table. Hopefully everything should be fine. And size versus 0, so let's make a commit, and finally we'll just run this copy data to reference so that this one can pass it back as a response. So let's click on F8, and you see 201 successfully created the records, and this is what the response arrived. So we can go to the backend table also. G parent and order ID 10. I think it should be followed by certain leading zeros. Yes, we have one record created. Here it is. And similar way with this value, we can also check the record in our item table. And let's put that value, and I believe it will be 2 entries. Indeed 2. So let's go back and see perfectly records gets created. So I think you understood that deep insert, how it works and in which context we should use the deep insert. Thanks for watching, and we'll shortly connect with something new in the next episode. Goodbye till then.